For 3 years, he was the first person I talked to every morning and the last voice I heard before I slept. He knew my favorite songs, my childhood fears, even the way I cried when life got too heavy. And somehow, despite never meeting him in person, I fell completely in love. Everyone warned me. My friends said online love wasn't real. My mother begged me to slow down. But when he finally stood in front of me at the airport, smiling exactly the way he smiled during our video calls, I believed I had found my forever. 6 months later, I married him. It was supposed to be the happiest night of my life. But a few hours after the wedding, while I was still wearing my white dress, he looked at me with tears in his eyes and said something that made my entire body go cold. "Before we go any further, there's something you need to know about me." I laughed at first. I thought maybe he was joking. But then, he handed me a folder. Inside it was a secret so horrifying, so impossible, that in that exact moment, I realized the man I married might not even be the person I thought he was. And what happened after that night destroyed both of our lives forever.
I still remember the first message he ever sent me. It was 2:13 in the morning. I couldn't sleep that night, so I was lying in bed scrolling through random posts online, trying to distract myself from another exhausting day. My apartment was silent except for the sound of rain tapping against the window. And then my phone buzzed. "Hey. I know this is random, but your smile looks sad. Are you okay?" I stared at the message for a second longer than I should have. Normally, I ignored strangers online. Especially men. Most conversations felt fake, forced, or creepy within minutes. But something about him felt different. Maybe it was the way he didn't immediately flirt with me. Maybe it was because he noticed something nobody else did. Or maybe I was just lonely enough to answer. I typed back, "What makes you think I'm sad?" 3 dots appeared instantly. "Because happy people don't post quotes about surviving life at 2 a.m. I laughed. Actually laughed. And that was the beginning of everything. His name was Ethan. At least, that's the name he gave me. He told me he worked remotely as a graphic designer and traveled a lot for freelance projects. He lived 2 states away, which made meeting difficult, but at the time, I didn't care. Because talking to him felt easy. Dangerously easy. Every single day, our conversations got longer. Morning texts turned into late-night phone calls. Late-night calls turned into video chats that lasted until sunrise. Soon, he became part of my routine. He would remind me to eat when I skipped meals during stressful work days. He'd stay awake with me during my panic attacks. He listened when I talked about my father leaving when I was 10. And somehow, he always knew exactly what to say. "You deserve to be loved gently," he once whispered during one of our calls. Nobody had ever said something like that to me before. Not my ex-boyfriend. Not my family. Nobody. And slowly, without realizing it, I started depending on him emotionally. That should have scared me. But instead, it felt safe. Looking back now, I think that was the moment I truly fell in love with him. Not because he was handsome. Not because he was charming. But because he made me feel seen. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. 3 months into our relationship, my best friend Ava finally confronted me about him. "You've never met this guy in real life," she said while stirring her iced coffee aggressively. "Don't you think that's weird?" I rolled my eyes. "We video call every day. That doesn't mean anything anymore. People fake things online all the time. You're being paranoid." "No," she snapped. "I'm being realistic." I hated that conversation. Mostly because a tiny part of me knew she wasn't completely wrong. There were things about Ethan that didn't always add up. Like how he avoided introducing me to friends or family. Or how every time we planned to meet, something suddenly happened. A cancelled flight. A family emergency, a work trip. Always something. But every time doubt crept into my mind, he somehow knew how to pull me back in. I'm scared too, he admitted during one phone call. I've been hurt before. I just don't want to lose what we have. And just like that, I forgave everything again. Because love makes excuses for the people it doesn't want to lose. 6 months later, he finally asked to meet me. I was so nervous that morning I changed outfits 4 times before leaving for the airport. My hands were shaking the entire drive there. I kept imagining awkward silence. What if there was no chemistry in person? What if we looked at each other and realized we made a mistake? But the second I saw him walking toward me through the arrival gate, every fear disappeared. He looked exactly like the man from the video calls. Tall. Dark brown hair. Soft eyes. That same crooked smile that always made my stomach flip. And when he wrapped his arms around me for the first time, I swear the entire world disappeared. You're real, I whispered against his chest. He laughed softly. Of course I'm real. I had no idea how ironic those words would become later. That weekend felt like a dream. We walked through downtown holding hands like teenagers. We stayed up until 4 a.m. talking in bed. We kissed in the kitchen while making terrible pancakes. Everything felt natural. Easy. Like we had known each other forever. And before he left, he looked me in the eyes and said the words I had secretly been waiting months to hear. Move in with me. I should have said no. I should have slowed down. But when you spend months building emotional intimacy with someone, logic becomes almost useless. So 3 months later, I packed my entire life into boxes and moved across the country for him. And that decision changed everything. The first few weeks living with Ethan felt perfect. Too perfect. At the time, I thought I was finally getting the kind of love people write books about. The kind that feels calm instead of chaotic. Every morning, he made coffee before I woke up. Every night, he wrapped his arms around me while we watched movies on the couch. He kissed my forehead when he thought I was asleep. And after years of toxic relationships, that softness felt addictive. I kept thinking, this is it. This is the person I'm supposed to spend my life with. But slowly, tiny things started bothering me. Little things. The kind of things you ignore because they seem too small to matter. Like how protective he was over his phone. If I walked into the room unexpectedly, he'd flip it face down instantly. Sometimes he'd step outside to answer calls. Other times, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and notice him texting someone beside me in the dark. The second he realized I was awake, the screen would disappear. At first, I blamed myself for overthinking. After all, relationships need trust. Right, but then came the lies. One Friday night, he told me he had an emergency work meeting out of town and wouldn't be home until morning. I remember kissing him goodbye at the door and telling him to drive safely. 3 hours later, I saw him. Completely by accident. I had gone to a grocery store near our apartment because I forgot to buy milk. And there he was. Standing outside a restaurant. Laughing with a woman I had never seen before. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I might throw up right there in the parking lot. At first, I tried to convince myself it was business related. Maybe a coworker. Maybe a client. But then she touched his face. And he didn't move away. I sat frozen in my car watching them for almost 10 minutes. 10 minutes that completely shattered the version of him I had built inside my head. When he came home the next morning, I confronted him immediately. Who was she? The color drained from his face instantly. For a split second, pure panic flashed across his eyes. But then he recovered. She's my cousin. I stared at him. Your cousin touches your face like that? She was emotional, he said quickly. Her marriage is falling apart. The explanation sounded ridiculous. And deep down, I knew he was lying. But then he grabbed my hands. Please trust me, he whispered. I love you. That sentence destroyed my ability to think clearly. Because when you love someone deeply, sometimes you choose the version of reality that hurts less. So I let it go. Or at least, I pretended to. But after that night, something inside me changed. I started noticing everything. The secretive behavior. The random disappearances. The passwords. The tension in his voice whenever I asked simple questions. And the worst part, I became obsessed with finding proof. I hated the person I was turning into. I checked his social media constantly. I watched his expressions carefully. I memorized patterns in his behavior. Love slowly turned into anxiety. Then one night, everything got worse. Ethan was in the shower when his phone lit up on the kitchen counter beside me. I wasn't trying to snoop. At least, not at first. But the message preview appeared on the screen before I could look away. I miss you already. My heart stopped. Underneath the message was a heart emoji. And the contact name wasn't saved. Just a number. My hands started shaking violently. I knew I shouldn't touch the phone. I knew crossing that line would change everything. But heartbreak makes people do desperate things. So I picked it up. The passcode didn't work. Neither did his birthday. Or mine. I almost gave up. But then I remembered something. During one of our first conversations, he told me his favorite number was 0417 because it was important to his past. I typed it in. The phone unlocked instantly. And what I found inside destroyed me. Dozens of messages. Pictures. Conversations. Not with one woman. Multiple women. Some messages were romantic. Others were explicit. A few went back almost the entire length of our relationship. My chest tightened so hard I couldn't breathe. It felt like the floor underneath me no longer existed. Every memory we had suddenly felt fake. Every I love you. Every promise. Every late night reassurance. All of it contaminated. And then, I saw something even worse. One of the women sent him a message saying, "Does your wife know about us yet?" Wife. I read the message again. And again. And again. My vision blurred instantly. Because Ethan and I weren't married. Not yet. So why would she call me his wife unless there was another one? I don't remember walking to the bathroom door. 1 second I was staring at the message on his phone, and the next, I was pounding on the bathroom door so hard my hands hurt. Ethan. The shower turned off immediately. Baby. I pushed the door open before he could stop me. Water dripped down his face as he stared at me in shock. But the second he saw the phone in my hand, everything changed. His expression went completely pale. Not confused. Not angry. Terrified. Who is she? I whispered. He swallowed hard. What are you talking about? Don't lie to me. My voice cracked so loudly it barely sounded like mine anymore. I threw the phone onto the counter between us. The messages were still open. The woman calling me his wife. The pictures. The flirting. The lies. All of it. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The only sound in the room was water dripping onto the tile floor. Then finally, he sat down on the edge of the bathtub and covered his face with both hands. And that silence told me more than words ever could. "Oh my God," I whispered. "It's true." "No." "How many women?" "It's not what you think." "How many?" My entire body was shaking now. I had never felt rage like that before. Not loud rage. Not screaming rage. The kind that makes your chest feel hollow. Like someone reached inside you and ripped something out. Ethan looked up slowly, eyes full of panic. "There's something I need to explain." "Then explain it." He stood up carefully like he was approaching a wounded animal. "I never wanted to hurt you." "That's your explanation." "No," he said quickly. "Please, just listen to me." I should have walked away. I should have packed my things and left right then. But when someone breaks your heart unexpectedly, your brain becomes desperate for answers. So I listened. "And I wish I hadn't." "There was someone before you," he said quietly. "A girlfriend." He hesitated. Then came the sentence that made my stomach twist violently. "My wife." I felt the air leave my lungs. "What?" "We got married young." It was complicated. I actually laughed. Not because anything was funny. But because my brain genuinely couldn't process what I was hearing. "You're married." "We're separated." "That's not the same thing." "I was going to tell you. When after our wedding." I didn't know how. I stared at him in complete disbelief. This man had lived with me. Slept beside me. Talked about children with me. And somehow forgot to mention he already had a wife. "What else are you lying about?" I whispered. His silence scared me more than anything. Because guilty people hesitate before choosing which truth to tell first. And that's exactly what he was doing. Finally, he looked at me and said, "My name isn't Ethan." Everything inside me froze. I honestly thought I misheard him. "What?" "My real name is Daniel." I stepped backward instinctively. "No. I can explain." "No," I repeated, shaking my head violently now. "No, no, no." Nothing around me felt real anymore. Not the apartment. Not him. Not even myself. It felt like waking up inside someone else's nightmare. "You lied about your name." "It started before I knew you seriously." "How long?" I snapped. "How long have you been pretending to be someone else?" "I used Ethan online because." "Because why?" "Because my wife was tracking my accounts." I felt physically sick. Every answer uncovered something worse. Every truth led to another lie. And suddenly, I realized something horrifying. I had absolutely no idea who this man really was. None. The person I fell in love with, the late-night phone calls, the vulnerable conversations, the future we planned, it was all built on fake foundations. I started crying so hard I couldn't breathe properly. Daniel Ethan, whatever his real identity even was anymore, tried to come closer. I moved away instantly. "Don't touch me." His face shattered. And for one painful second, I saw genuine heartbreak in his eyes. Which somehow made everything worse. Because even after all the lies, part of me still loved him. And I hated myself for that. "I was going to leave her," he whispered. "When?" "I don't know. That's the problem," I said quietly. You never actually planned to. Tears rolled down his face now too. But I couldn't comfort him anymore. Not after this. Not after realizing I had sacrificed my entire life for someone who didn't even tell me his real name. Then suddenly, his phone buzzed again. Neither of us moved at first. But when the screen lit up on the counter, my blood ran cold. Because the message wasn't from one of the women. It was from someone saved as Detective Harris. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. I just stared at the glowing phone screen while my heartbeat slammed violently against my ribs. Detective Harris. The message underneath read, "We need to talk immediately." She knows. My mouth went dry. Slowly, painfully slowly. I looked up at him. Or Daniel. Or whoever he really was. What the hell is that? He grabbed the phone too quickly. Too defensively. And that alone terrified me. It's nothing. I laughed in disbelief. A detective texting you at midnight is nothing. It's complicated. Stop saying that. I was screaming now. Not because I wanted to. Because my brain literally could not handle one more lie. One more secret. One more piece of information that made this man feel like a stranger standing in front of me. I backed away from him until I hit the bedroom wall. Tell me the truth, I whispered. Right now. All of it. He looked exhausted. Like a man carrying something heavy for a very long time. Then finally, he sat down slowly on the edge of the bed and looked at the floor. My wife disappeared 8 months ago. Every sound around me seemed to vanish. What? She's missing. I blinked at him. Over and over. Trying to process the sentence. No, I said quietly. No, you said you were separated. We were. Then why is a detective involved? He rubbed both hands over his face. Because I'm the primary suspect. My stomach twisted so violently I nearly collapsed. For a moment, I genuinely thought I might faint. You're joking. I wish I was. I stared at him in horror. This couldn't be real. There was absolutely no way this was real. The man I shared a bed with, the man I loved, the man I moved across the country for, was being investigated for his missing wife. I suddenly couldn't breathe in that apartment anymore. The walls felt too close. The air felt poisoned. I turned instantly toward the closet and started throwing clothes into a bag. Wait. No. Please let me explain. You think there's an explanation for this? She left before I met you. Then why are the police still involved? Because nobody believes me. I stopped moving for 1 second. Not because I trusted him. But because his fear looked real. Desperate. Broken. She vanished, he said quietly. No note. No calls. Nothing. One day she was there, and the next day she was gone. Then why did you lie about your identity? Because when her case became public online, people started sending me death threats. My lawyer told me to stay private. And instead you invented a fake life. I didn't plan for this to happen. His voice cracked completely. I didn't plan to fall in love with you. That sentence hurt more than I expected. Because despite everything, a part of me believed him. And that was the terrifying part. I hated that my heart still reacted to him. I hated that I still saw the man who stayed awake during my panic attacks. The man who kissed my forehead. The man who held me when I cried. But now those memories felt infected with doubt. What was her name? I asked softly. His eyes filled instantly. Claire. For the first time that night, he looked genuinely destroyed. Not manipulative. Not defensive. Just shattered. How long were you married? 6 years. And you never thought maybe I deserved to know that before moving in with you? I was scared. That's not love, Daniel. That's selfishness. He looked down immediately because he knew I was right. Silence filled the apartment again. Then quietly, almost too quietly, I asked the question that had been growing inside my chest since the moment I saw the detective's message. Did you hurt her? His head snapped up instantly. No. The answer came fast. Too fast. But his eyes looked offended more than angry. Like the accusation itself wounded him. I would never hurt Claire. Then where is she? I don't know. I wanted to believe him. God. I wanted to believe him so badly. But trust doesn't survive endless lies. And suddenly, every memory felt suspicious. Every cancelled trip. Every late-night call. Every secretive text. Every hidden detail. What if none of this was accidental? What if I had been living with someone dangerous this entire time? The thought made my skin crawl. Then his phone buzzed again. Another message from Detective Harris. This one appeared on the lock screen before he could hide it. And the second I read it, my entire body went cold. Your wife's body has been identified. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I just stood there staring at the phone screen while those words repeated inside my head over and over again. Your wife's body has been identified. Body. Not missing anymore. Dead. Daniel looked frozen too. Like his entire nervous system had suddenly shut down. Then slowly, his face lost all color. No, he whispered. The phone slipped from his hand and hit the floor. For one horrible second, the apartment became completely silent. Then he broke. He collapsed onto the edge of the bed, both hands gripping his head as if he was trying to hold himself together physically. No, 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 no. I had never seen grief look that raw before. Not in movies. Not in real life. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It looked like someone's soul being ripped apart from the inside. And suddenly, I didn't know what to think anymore. Because guilty people can cry. Manipulators can perform emotion. But this looked real. Painfully real. I took a small step backward anyway. Fear still sat heavily inside my chest. What happened to her? I whispered. He looked up at me with tears streaming uncontrollably down his face. I swear to God. I don't know. And somehow, that made everything worse. Because if he was innocent, then someone else had done something terrible. But if he was lying, then I was standing alone in an apartment with a man capable of hiding horrifying truths. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip my suitcase handle tightly just to stay steady. Daniel suddenly stood up. I have to go to the station. Instinctively, I flinched backward. The reaction crushed him instantly. I saw it in his face. The realization that I was afraid of him now. I'm not going to hurt you, he said quietly. But the problem was, I no longer knew what he was capable of. And he knew it. That hurt expression in his eyes slowly turned into something emptier. Resigned. I understand, he whispered. He grabbed his jacket with trembling hands and moved toward the apartment door. Then suddenly he stopped. Without turning around, he asked, "Did any part of you ever love me?" The question hit me so hard I almost cried again. Because despite the lies, despite the betrayal, despite the fear, the answer was still yes. And that destroyed me. I don't know anymore, I whispered. He nodded slowly like he deserved that answer. Then he left. The second the door closed behind him, my legs gave out completely. I slid down onto the floor and finally let myself break. I cried until my chest physically hurt. Not just because of the lies. Not just because of Claire. But because the future I imagined no longer existed. The man I planned to marry, the life I moved across the country for, the love I thought saved me, had collapsed in a single night. And the worst part, I still missed him. That feeling disgusted me. How could I still love someone after all this? But love doesn't disappear the second trust does. Sometimes it lingers long after it should have died. Around 3 a.m. my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something inside me answered anyway. Hello. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Then a woman's voice whispered, "You need to leave before he comes back." Every muscle in my body tightened instantly. Who is this? You're not safe with him. My heart started pounding violently again. Who are you? A shaky breath came through the phone. Then the woman said something that made my blood freeze completely. My sister was Claire. I stood up immediately. What? He lies to everyone, she whispered. And if you stay with him, you'll end up just like she did. The call disconnected. Just like that. I stared at my phone in complete horror. The room suddenly felt darker. Colder. I looked toward the apartment door, half expecting Daniel to walk back in at any second. My brain was screaming at me to leave. Now. Immediately. So that's exactly what I did. I grabbed my suitcase, my purse, and my keys with shaking hands and rushed out of the apartment before sunrise. I didn't even know where I was driving. I just knew one thing for certain: if Claire's sister was telling the truth, then I had fallen in love with a man who might have killed his wife. I didn't stop driving until the sun came up. By then, my eyes burned from crying and exhaustion, and my hands hurt from gripping the steering wheel too tightly. I checked my mirrors constantly the entire drive. Every car behind me felt suspicious. Every unknown number on my phone made my chest tighten. I ended up checking into a small motel 2 towns away using cash because paranoia had completely taken over my brain. The woman at the front desk barely looked at me as she handed me the room key. But the second I locked myself inside that motel room, I completely lost it again. I sat on the floor beside the bed, knees against my chest, trying to understand how my life had become this terrifying overnight. Just days ago, I was planning a wedding. Now I was hiding from a man I wasn't even sure I truly knew. I barely slept. Every sound outside the motel room jolted me awake. At around 9 a.m. my phone started vibrating non-stop. Daniel. Again. And again. And again. I ignored every call. Then the texts came. Please talk to me. You disappeared. I know you're scared, but I would never hurt you. Then finally, the police arrested me this morning. I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me felt relieved. Another part felt sick. Because if he was innocent, his entire life was falling apart while I hid in a motel afraid of him. But if he was guilty, then maybe being arrested was exactly where he belonged. A few minutes later, another message appeared. Not from Daniel. From an unknown number. If you want the truth about Claire, meet me tonight. Come alone. Attached was an address. My stomach tightened immediately. Every instinct told me not to go. It could have been dangerous. A trap. Something connected to Daniel. But another part of me desperately needed answers. Because nothing made sense anymore. So that night, against my better judgment, I went. The address led to a small diner outside town. The kind with flickering neon lights and almost empty parking lots. Rain poured heavily as I walked inside. And immediately, I saw her. A woman sitting alone in the back corner booth. Early 30s. Dark hair. Exhausted eyes. The second I approached, she looked up at me slowly. You came. You said you were Claire's sister. I am. She introduced herself as Vanessa. And within 10 minutes, she completely shattered everything I thought I knew again. Daniel didn't kill my sister, she said quietly. I stared at her in disbelief. What? He lied to you. A lot. But not about that. My chest tightened. Then why did you call me saying I wasn't safe? Because people around Daniel get destroyed emotionally. The bitterness in her voice felt deeply personal. He's selfish. Secretive. Broken. But he's not violent. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Then what happened to Claire? Vanessa looked down at her coffee cup for several seconds before answering. She was sick. A cold feeling spread through my chest. What kind of sick? She struggled with severe depression for years. The diner suddenly felt too quiet. Too still. Vanessa continued carefully. Daniel tried hiding it from everyone because Claire hated people knowing. She disappeared before, but she always came back eventually. I swallowed hard. But this time she didn't. Vanessa nodded slowly. They found her car near a hiking trail yesterday morning. My throat tightened painfully. She. I couldn't even finish the sentence. Vanessa did it for me. She took her own life. The words hit me like a punch to the chest. For a moment, I genuinely couldn't speak. Because suddenly, everything became more tragic than terrifying. Claire wasn't murdered. Daniel wasn't secretly some violent monster. Instead, this entire story was built around grief, lies, fear, and broken people hurting each other in different ways. But why would the police suspect him? I asked quietly. Because he lied constantly, Vanessa answered immediately. Because he changed identities online. Because he hid the marriage. Because he panicked instead of telling the truth. Every sentence felt painfully accurate. That was exactly who Daniel was. Not evil. Just emotionally damaged in ways that destroyed everyone around him. Vanessa leaned forward slightly. He loved Claire, she whispered. And I think he loves you too. But Daniel doesn't know how to tell the truth until it's too late. Tears burned my eyes again instantly. Because deep down, that felt true too. I hated how true it felt. So what happens now? I asked. Vanessa looked at me sadly. That depends on whether you can survive loving someone like him. Outside, rain slammed against the diner windows while silence settled between us. And for the first time since everything happened, I realized the scariest part wasn't that Daniel lied to me. It was that despite knowing all of this, part of me still wanted to go back to him. I told myself I wasn't going back because I loved him. I told myself I only needed closure. One final conversation. One final truth. That's what I repeated in my head the entire drive to the police station the next morning. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself too. Because no matter how hard I tried to kill my feelings for Daniel, they were still alive. Broken. Damaged. Confused. But alive. The police station smelled like burnt coffee and old paper. A tired-looking officer led me into a small visitation room with grey walls and a metal table bolted to the floor. And when Daniel walked in a minute later, my heart betrayed me instantly. He looked horrible. Dark circles under his eyes. Wrinkled clothes. Unshaven face. Like he hadn't slept at all. But the second he saw me sitting there, something softened in his expression. Relief. Real relief. You came. I hated how emotional his voice made me feel. I crossed my arms tightly. Vanessa found me. His jaw tightened immediately. She shouldn't have involved you. She told me Claire took her own life. Pain flashed across his face so fast it almost looked physical. Then slowly, he sat down across from me. She struggled for a long time, he whispered. Why didn't you tell me any of this? Because every time I tried. He stopped and looked down. I was terrified you'd leave. So instead you built an entire relationship on lies. I know. That answer frustrated me more than excuses would have. Because he wasn't defending himself anymore. He knew he destroyed everything. I loved you, I whispered. His eyes instantly filled with tears. I still love you. The words hit me so hard I had to look away. Part of me wanted to scream at him. Another part wanted to cry. And the worst part, a dangerous piece of my heart still wanted to believe him. Daniel leaned forward slightly. I never meant to manipulate you. But you did. I know. You let me plan a future with someone who didn't even exist. I know. Every answer came quietly. Broken. Like he hated himself for all of it. Silence filled the room again. Then finally I asked the question that mattered most. Was any of it real? His eyes locked onto mine instantly. All of it was real. I wanted to reject that answer. I wanted to tell him real love doesn't lie. But relationships aren't always that simple. Because the terrifying truth is, someone can love you deeply and still hurt you horribly. Both things can exist at once. I don't know how to trust you anymore, I admitted. You probably shouldn't. That response caught me off guard. I'm serious, he said softly. I need help. Real help. I've spent years hiding parts of myself because I thought if people saw the truth, they'd leave. And were they wrong? That question shattered him completely. He looked down at the table for several seconds before answering. No. My chest hurt instantly. Because for the first time, I finally understood him. Daniel wasn't some evil mastermind. He was a deeply damaged man who lied because he was terrified of abandonment. But fear doesn't erase consequences. And trauma doesn't excuse betrayal. The officer opened the door a few minutes later and announced Daniel was being released pending further investigation. As he stood up to leave, he looked at me carefully. You don't owe me anything, he whispered. I nodded slowly. But before I could respond, his phone rang. The second he looked at the screen, his expression changed completely. Fear. Pure fear. What is it? I asked. He hesitated. Then answered quietly, it's Claire's mother. Something about the way he said it made my stomach twist. He answered the call immediately. Hello. I watched his face lose color within seconds. What? Silence. Then, that's impossible. Every hair on my arm stood up. Daniel slowly lowered the phone from his ear and looked at me like he'd just seen a ghost. What happened? I whispered. His lips parted slightly. Then he said the one sentence I never expected to hear. Claire's mother says the body wasn't Claire.